Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena. I still do not have a prediction because of how competitive this fight is. Half the time, I'm convinced Islam Makhachev is going to run through JDM and sub him in one. And half the time, I'm thinking JDM is going to be too much for him. He's going to bully Islam Makhachev. So what I'm going to do in this video to help myself think about who is the better prediction, I am going to give 5 reasons as to why you should favor JDM. And I'm also going to give 5 reasons as to why you should favor Islam Makhachev. So we're going to do 5 arguments for Makhachev winning, 5 arguments for JDM winning, and hopefully I'll be able to make a better prediction. First up, we're going to get to Makhachev. I think the lighter man skill is the best argument you could make for Islam Makhachev. Think about it like this. Alex Pereira moving up to light heavyweight becomes one of the light heavyweight goats. Khamzat Chimaev makes Dricus du Plessis look like he never grappled. Former welterweight moving up to fight a middleweight that was on the verge of middleweight GOAT status. Who was Islam Makhachev's toughest fight? Alexander Volkanovski. What did Jones do to Gane? Well, subbed him in a couple of minutes. Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. That's aged well. Ilia finished him in 2 minutes. Who does that to Oliveira? We've never seen that happen. We see time and time again when people move up weight classes, they clean up shop. And Islam Makhachev is the best lightweight ever. Not just in the world right now, the greatest lightweight of all time. If he is at a different level than these other lightweights, and he's able to beat lighter man skill Alexander Volkanovski in a chess match and even outstrike him in moments as well, I don't see why he wouldn't be taking lighter man skill, the ultimate championship GOAT level lighter man skill, to welterweight, to where you have to think he's going to be a higher level than Belal Muhammad. Even though Belal Muhammad is a great fighter, Islam Makhachev is the best lightweight we've ever seen, arguably. At least resume-wise, he's got to be better than Gilbert Burns, and Gilbert Burns gave JDM some issues. All right, so the number one thing is lighter man skill. We see it time and time again. People, even champions, can have competitive fights. They move up and they dominate. Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski were much bigger tests for Ilia Topuria. Oliveira, he made it look easy. Islam Makhachev could just be levels above these welterweights. Even though the welterweight division is stacked and we know it's really good, he could be bringing the lighter man skill. Number 2, no weight cut. Islam Makhachev is going to go in there not only with lighter man skill, but this time he doesn't have to focus on just losing weight. Makhachev has one of the toughest weight cuts in the sport. He's talked about as maybe being the biggest lightweight on the roster. And he's never missed weight or anything like that, but let's be honest, when he weighs in, he looks like he's on death's door sometimes. Towards the end of a training camp, I would imagine, especially for a guy like Makhachev, I would imagine that the latter half of a training camp, a big portion of your mental energy is just for losing weight. That's like a battle in and of itself. And now that he doesn't have to worry about that, his training camp can just be focused on skill building, the fight itself. He can actually enjoy his training a little bit more, right? He's going to be in a better mood. He's going to be happier. And you know what they say, a happy fighter is a dangerous fighter. And Makhachev, I feel like this guy's going to be having fun again. He's going to have a new fire lit under him, a lack of a weight cut, a new challenge, bulking up, and he's going to be in a much better place on fight week. The risk of injury, I would also imagine, is a lot lower because when you're cutting weight, and again, he's going to cut weight. Don't get me wrong. Makhachev still has a weight cut. Like he's going to be bulked up. He's put on muscle. He's still going to have to cut some weight, of course. But the point that I'm making is when you're on a crazy crash diet and you're trying to get down to 155 pounds, towards the end of your training camp, the risk of injury is probably pretty high because you're not getting enough calories to recover adequately, right? And because your recovery is not where it should be, the risk of injury is higher as well. So there's a likelihood that Makhachev's recovery is much better. I think there's a higher likelihood that he goes in there very healthy, right? In a really good place. Now, of course, fighters, they're always going into a fight with something, but there's a higher likelihood because he's not going to have to put a lot of mental energy towards cutting weight, because he's going to be eating more calories to be able to recover better, where he may actually be the best he's ever been, right? This could be a much better version of Islam Makhachev. I mean, we always talk about how, what if fighters didn't have these brutal weight cuts and they just had to cut a little bit? They would be so much better. They'd be so much more durable. He's going to be durable. He's going to be strong as a house. If you've seen the recent photos of him where he's on this beach, dude, Makhachev looks like a fucking unit. You know, this does not look like a guy that moved up a weight class. This looks like a welterweight. This looks like a guy that's going to be strong as an ox. Okay, and he's already talked about as being one of the strongest lightweights on the roster. No weight cut, that's big. He's going to be able to focus on skill building, the fight itself. Number 3, he's just better than JDM's former opponents. And I rewatched JDM versus Belal Muhammad, and it wasn't as close as I originally thought it was, meaning I had it 4-1 JDM watching it live. I thought that he clearly won, but I thought that Belal Muhammad made it a little bit more competitive watching it live than watching it back. Watching it back, JDM, in my opinion, was clearly in control, but there were moments where Belal was doing his thing. But the point that I'm making here is I think Makhachev, he's a more elite striker and a more elite grappler than Belal. The wrestling itself is actually kind of similar, but when it comes to submissions, when it comes to finishing ability, when it comes to those crafty techniques on the ground, Makhachev is way better. His striking, clinch striking, kickboxing, it's way better. And then you look at Gilbert Burns, who gave JDM some issues, and I know JDM broke his arm in the middle of that fight, but nonetheless, if Gilbert Burns is giving you some issues, Makhachev, and I know JDM's getting a lot better, I get that, that could be a whole different story, right? Makhachev is going to be at a whole different level. Makhachev, unlike Gilbert Burns, has one of the most dangerous submission games in MMA. I know Gilbert Burns is a good grappler, but in MMA, he's not nearly as dangerous on the ground, okay? And that's kind of the point that I'm making. If Belal Muhammad's in there making it pretty competitive, Makhachev could maybe turn the tide. If Gilbert Burns is taking his back and keeping him on the ground, I know Gilbert Burns is high level, but Makhachev is going to be so much more dangerous with his submission threat for MMA grappling that could be the game changer. You know, again, Belal, good fighter. Gilbert Burns, even though he was a little bit slightly declined in the JDM fight, it wasn't the Gilbert Burns of today where he's definitely seriously declined, maybe even washed completely. But Makhachev's at his peak. He's in his prime. Ultimate lighter man skill. Best lightweight ever. Could be a different level, okay? So that's number 3. Number 4, that smirk and grin. I just have this feeling that Makhachev's going to be able to go in here because he's happy and he's having a good time in his training camp. There's no weight cut. He's not miserable. I have a feeling that Makhachev is just going to be on cloud 9. And we may even see the smirky Makhachev who's cracking jokes, who's talking a little bit of competitive trash talk. And JDM's going to be on his weight cut. JDM's going to be gritting down at the press conference. He's going to be a little bit pissed off. JDM is one of these guys where he's like, he's chill. He's a chiller. But just like a lot of other fighters, they're on edge because they're like, you know, suffering on the weight cut. Makhachev's going to be happy. He's going to be smirking. And JDM's going to be like, you know, I'm dangerous. This guy's smirking, man. Why is he not intimidated by the grittiness, right? And Makhachev's just going to be in there. He's going to be cracking jokes, brother. Australia don't have wrestling, brother, right? And I don't know. Makhachev's really good at getting under people's skin, all right? Like, you know, Makhachev is recently looked like he's on edge once it gets closer to fights. But now without the weight cut, I think we're going to see the fat and happy Makhachev, who could be the most dangerous version. And it could be something where, you know, that brother smirk, that could be something that pisses off JDM. You know, I'm just saying. That's not the best reason. But number 5, a really good game planner. I mean, you don't beat Alexander Volkanovski in a 5-round chess match when Volkanovski's in his prime, with the lighter man skill as well, with Craig Jones in his corner. You don't beat him without having a really good fight IQ and ability to game plan. And Makhachev, he's been in these big fights time and time again. He has a lot of experience. The fight IQ of Makhachev. Whereas JDM, outside of the Belal Muhammad fight, Gilbert Burns was good, don't get me wrong. But Belal Muhammad is by far, you know, the best fighter JDM has fought. Makhachev's fought a lot of elite fighters at this point. And he's been proven in these big spots over and over and over again. Now, don't get me wrong. I think JDM is the kind of fighter to step up when the pressure's on as well. He did that against Belal Muhammad, right? After a year and a half off. Makhachev, in my opinion, steps up to the occasion. This reminds me of the Oliveira fight, where Makhachev was doing really good work, but Oliveira was seen as someone that was going to be an absolute monster for Islam Makhachev. Like, that was someone that was way, way higher level than everyone else Makhachev was beating. Remember, Makhachev, he ran through Dan Hooker, he ran through Bobby Green, but Oliveira is just a much higher level. He's so much more dangerous, and there's nothing Makhachev can do to Oliveira on the ground because it's Charles Oliveira, right? And Makhachev has his best performance ever. That was his iconic performance. And I think that Makhachev's going to be one of these guys that when the pressure's on the most, that's when he has his best performances. I know that the pressure was on in the Poirier fight. I get that, but this is a new test. This is a new thing. The last time we were talking about a nightmare matchup for Makhachev, he schooled Oliveira on the feet. And I don't think he's necessarily going to school JDM on the feet, but this guy's on the verge of GOAT status. Makhachev is that next level, and sometimes it just doesn't feel like he's going to lose. But let's get on to JDM. Number one, too big for him. All right. And I know this is ironic coming from me because I'm always making fun of people that say, hey, he's just too big for him when people are moving up. I'm not necessarily talking about the strength. What I mean is he might be a little bit too rangy. Makhachev, he has looked real good against Alexander Volkanovski, okay? And Volkanovski is one of the highest level strikers in UFC history. And we saw what Volk was able to do to a rangier opponent like Diego Lopez, who's super dangerous. But, you know, against Renato Moicano, Makhachev looked a little bit awkward on the feet. Now, again, we didn't see a lot of striking exchanges, but there were a couple of awkward moments for him on the feet against a rangier fighter, right? And I think that JDM, we usually think of him as like a pocket boxer, but JDM in his last couple of fights has looked really, really solid with his rangy kicking game as well. The front kicks to the body, the head kicks, the leg kicks. JDM has that ability to play the long, rangy striker as well. And I think that could give Makhachev some issues, right? And so, yeah, where Makhachev is able to sort of walk down a 5'6" Alexander Volkanovski, this time it's going to be a much rangier Jack Della Maddalena who's super powerful, who has that slick kicking game as well. And I could see that being a problem for Makhachev. I could see it being a bit of an issue. All right. He's going to be rangier than Dustin Poirier as well, who's barely 5'9" and again, isn't known for having a great kicking game. JDM has a really well-rounded striking game. The range could be an issue for Makhachev. All right, so that's number one argument for Jack Della Maddalena. Number two, Craig Jones. That's like an argument in and of itself. You train with Craig Jones, you're getting the specifics. You train with Volkanovski and Craig Jones, you're getting the specifics 2.0. Craig Jones has that style that is kind of perfect against the Dagestani style of grappling. We saw how much he was able to help Volkanovski, and sure, Makhachev was able to control Volk on the ground at times, but he wasn't able to get close to finishing Volk. And JDM is a talented fighter, super talented. He's already a decent grappler, and people already praise him for his ability to not get finished on the ground when he has his back taken or be able to reverse the position on the ground like he did with Gilbert Burns. And he is someone that's already trained with Craig Jones, but now training with Craig Jones is one thing. Now he's going into the specifics with Craig Jones, and it's a little bit different. It's a lot more personalized for JDM's style. And I just think that Craig Jones, you have to think he's going to be able to help an already talented grappler like JDM. And he's already prepared Volkanovski for Makhachev, and he knows Makhachev's game. You got to think that it's very likely that JDM has the crafty skills and the specifics learned from Craig Jones that will help him survive on the ground and not get finished and be able to scramble up to his feet at times as well. And if he could keep it standing, and I think there's a decent reason to believe he will not get submitted on the ground because he's working with the guy that he's working with, could be problems for Makhachev. That's number two, right? Working with Craig Jones is a game changer. Number three, granite chin and power. He's one of these built different fighters in the welterweight division. I can't see him getting finished on the feet. Like Makhachev, he has power. We've seen him head kick KO people, but JDM is known for having a granite chin. And he's the guy that's going to have the serious power advantage in this fight. And that's dangerous for someone like Islam Makhachev, who I feel like JDM's going to be, because he's rangy as well, because he's super high level and slick on the feet, he's going to be the guy with the power advantage that maybe Makhachev is going to have to be a little bit on edge about. And I could see JDM taking a couple of punches to land his own. Now, maybe we see Makhachev with a different level of speed to these welterweights now that he's moved up and he's packing more of a punch, and maybe he is going to be able to get a lot of respect from JDM. But, I mean, JDM sometimes just walks people down, and his defense is pretty underrated as well, and he's able to take punches to give his own combinations that are really slick. And sure, he wasn't able to put Bilal away, even though he landed like 100+ significant strikes on him. But Bilal Muhammad's got a granite chin as well. And Makhachev, he's going to be up a weight class, no weight cut. His chin's probably going to be good in this fight. But that's scary. The power, all right? The toughness, the mental toughness as well. Look at him in the 5th round against Bilal Muhammad, where even though he was ahead, you never really know what the judges are saying or what the judges are thinking. It was still kind of competitive, and he goes out there like a bat out of hell and just marches him down like a juggernaut. And that could be very dangerous for Islam Makhachev. All right, number 4. I talked about how Makhachev is a higher level than Gilbert Burns. I talked about how he's a higher level than Bilal Muhammad. Well, you could kind of say that JDM's higher level than a slightly older Dustin Poirier as well. Now, we could find out that Poirier, lightweight, there's a different type of skill in that lightweight division, and JDM just doesn't have the Poirier ability to stuff takedowns, right? Like, we could see Poirier is actually a bigger test. We don't know what's going to happen until the fight, but Poirier's kind of known for having bad hips. I believe he had a hip surgery back in the day. He was slightly older going into this fight. He's not as slick on the feet. He's not as rangy, and you just got to think that it's very likely that JDM is going to have a better version, a better style on the night than a slightly older Poirier. Now, Dustin Poirier is not old just because he retired, but he was 36 in this fight, I believe, or maybe almost 36 years old, and a little bit worn down. JDM, he doesn't have that many fights in the UFC. He just won the belt. He's going to take a lot of confidence away from that. He may have not even reached his peak yet. He's in his absolute prime, but he may not have even reached his ultimate peak. You got to think that Craig Jones specifics, the slick, finesseful striking that we've seen from him so far, especially the strength as well. He's going to be a lot bigger and more durable than Dustin, more powerful. Dude, that could be a problem. And if Poirier, even though Makhachev was winning the majority of that fight, right? And he was controlling it, and he was even outboxing Dustin Poirier, which was really impressive. If Poirier is making it somewhat competitive, JDM can make it really competitive and maybe turn the tide, right? And you know what? If this is your only reason, you are kind of assuming that Makhachev is going to be the same version. I talked about how without a weight cut, a new challenge as well, he's going to be rejuvenated. He's going to have letterman skill. Like, we could see a much better version of Makhachev too, right? But, I mean, this is one of the reasons, and I hear people talking about that, and I thought I would mention it. Number 5, when Makhachev fights people with full training camps and they have time to prepare for them, they typically make it pretty competitive. And I say in the beginning of this video that sometimes I just think Makhachev is going to run through JDM and sub him in one, and I still think that's possible. But if you think about the performances in which Makhachev has ran through people, Khamzat Chimaev-esque style like Dan Hooker, Bobby Green, Renato Moicano, Alexander Volkanovski in the rematch, those guys all took those on short notice. Now, Makhachev did as well, but when people have full training camps, Volk in the first fight, Dustin Poirier, Moises, whatever, except for Oliveira, right? Oliveira did get schooled, and that's the argument against it, and he had a full training camp 100%. But the point is, when people have had a lot of time to prepare for Makhachev, even if they lose, they're able to stay in there. They're able to not just get finished in one round. And I have a feeling that JDM, full preparation, Craig Jones in his corner, like super slick on the feet, extremely high-level striker with good takedown defense, tough, powerful. If he can survive the early onslaught, which again, it's very rare that Makhachev is getting people out of there with ease if they had a lot of time to prepare. If it's going to go into the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I don't know. I kind of favor Jack Della Maddalena because of his grit. This idea that if he's going to be able to get out of bad positions early, similarly to Volkanovski in the first fight, his takedown defensive scrambles will get better as the fight progresses. Now, we may find out he ain't Volk. We may find out that just because he's bigger than Volk and just because he's also a really slick striker, Volk is just built different. And Volk, his talent on the ground is superior to JDM's talent on the ground. And maybe JDM isn't able to pick up the same things that Volk is. And Maybe Volk's body type, being the shorter, stockier fighter, is a bigger problem for Makhachev, right? But I don't know. I think that if JDM has a lot of time to prepare with a guy like Craig Jones, Makhachev, I don't know if he runs through him in one round. And if he doesn't, and he finds himself in a similar position to the one that he was in against Poirier, even though he was winning that fight and even though he was in control of that fight, JDM is so dangerous, man. And he's not, a little bit cobbly like an older Dustin. I feel like JDM's going to be in there, rooted to the ground, rangy striking, kicks as well, not just relying on boxing exchanges. And this is why it's such a good fight. I don't know who's going to win. There are good reasons to pick both. But these are the 5 reasons I would favor JDM, and these are the 5 reasons I would favor Makhachev. And listen, you can't underestimate lighter man skill, and you can't underestimate the no weight cut. This could be the most durable version of Makhachev ever, and he's already known for having really good defense as well. I just can't wait for this fight. This fight is so good. It's so high level. I still haven't fully made up my mind. But let me know what you guys think. Until next time.